and it was not pleasant. So you can take that into consideration when I'm talking. All right.
Peace and blessings, family. My name is Justin Jones. I serve as the field manager for Equal Ground. Equal Ground is a black-led, black-owned voting rights organization here in Central Florida, looking to educate and mobilize voters ahead of this election season. I'm originally from Virginia. I've been here in the state of Florida for about 10 years now, working with numerous organizations on social and economic issues. I worked on the Fight for 15 campaign to increase minimum wage to $15 an hour. I worked in abolitionist movements. And unlike my sister, I have tried marijuana plenty of times, especially growing up in my youthful days. Pleasure to be here with you guys, and I'm looking.
So thank you all for introducing yourselves. We're going to start with this first question, and whoever feels comfortable answering it, they can go ahead and do that. So, how does Florida's constitutional amendment process? Well, you know what? Let me start with this. Let's read what the amendment actually says. So, Amendment 3, this initiative will legalize recreational marijuana for adults 21 years old and older. Individuals will be allowed to possess up to 3 ounces of marijuana, which is about 85 grams, with up to 5 grams in the form of concentrate. Existing medical marijuana treatment centers will be authorized under the initiative to sell marijuana to adults for personal use. The Florida state legislature could provide by state law for the licensure of entities other than existing medical marijuana treatment centers to cultivate and sell marijuana products. So that is what Amendment 3 would put into place. So the first question I have for you all is how does Florida's constitutional amendment process, which allows citizens to propose and vote on significant policy changes like Amendment 3, impact the long-term stability and flexibility of the state's constitution?
For one, it takes a lot for an amendment to be added to the Constitution, especially a citizens ran amendment. These individuals had to collect over 700,000 signatures just to get this on the ballot for us to be able to vote on. And this is not going to become a law until it reaches 60% of the vote here in Florida. Long term, that affects our Constitution a couple of ways. We need to send a message to our state politicians, for one, that we do not want them to increase the threshold for citizens to get amendments passed. They have attempted to propose legislation which would increase the supermajority from 60% up to 66%, so that it will be even more difficult for us citizens to get initiatives on the ballot. So if you have an idea about something and you want your idea to become law, besides having a politician support your idea and propose it in the form of a bill, you and a collective group could organize, go through the legal paperwork, and start your own citizens initiative to get your idea on the ballot so that Floridians could vote for it. So I think long term is instrumental that we get out and support this initiative. Is very costly to the people who are trying to put it on the ballot, and that it could have a lot of ramifications for us as a community, especially as we head towards and talk about decriminalization possibilities in the future.
Does anyone else want to answer that?
I don't think he could have said
Yeah.
anyone could say anything better than
Yeah.
that.
That was
All
just
right.
great.
Thank you.
So Wayne, this question is for you. As someone who works with veterans, what is your perspective on how marijuana legalization could benefit or harm veterans' mental health, particularly those dealing with PTSD or moral injury?
Sure. Thank you for that question. You know, I'll come out outright and say I'm a a fan of Amendment 3, not a huge fan, and there's some problems with it, I think. It's not a perfect amendment, but it's a step in the right direction. Now, for the veteran community, something I'm very well tied into is plant-based treatments that have gone a long way in helping our veteran community overcoming the obstacles they have both with moral injury and PTSD. And if you're not familiar with moral injury, it's not a subset of PTSD. It's an additional diagnosis that goes along with it, which is essentially doing something that violates your own personal moral code. Something a lot of our veterans are struggling with as we've come out of this over 20 years of global war on terror, which I'll side note and say it's not over yet. So the GWAT is still ongoing. We are still actively involving veterans in fighting in Somalia. So this is a problem set that our veteran community is very heavily dealing with as they're moving forward and progressing on to their next life, because we have scaled down our military forces. And with that much time and that many people who've experienced things over there, they're dealing with this problem in a multitude of ways. Either they failed to get any kind of treatment whatsoever, or if they go somewhere, a traditional clinic will literally, and I've seen it, it is a bag of drugs that completely numbs you out from existence as you would see fit. They struggle either without dealing with it or with dealing with it with traditional methods and maintaining employment, maintaining relationships with their families, maintaining any kind of meaningful friendship. And it only ends up exacerbating the problems for those veterans that are out there. And what we've seen by and large with plant-based treatments and methodologies with our veteran community, it's been very widely studied, it's very widely in use across the country, is that it gets veterans back onto the correct path, back able to enter the workforce, to be a quote productive member of society, engaging with their families, engaging with their friends. It's been a meaningful change for them that helps actually treat them and not just numb out the problem set that they have. And so I think legalization, creating an open pathway for them to be able to get access to medication like this is a huge benefit and a great step forward. And additionally, because a lot of the veteran community has struggled with employment as they've come out of military service, especially those dealing with moral injury and PTSD, I appreciate the fact that we're removing that barrier to entry to get additional treatment like this. And what I mean by that is I'd almost call it a regressive tax is how we've built it here in the state of Florida. You have to go to a doctor first and pay them, X amount of dollars in order to get your prescription to get access to this. My personal feeling and interaction with some of the doctors I've come across, and I'm sure there's plenty of great ones out there, I'm not disparaging them, it ends up being a system of all I'm going to do is get that $100 or $200 per patient to pay for that subscription, and I'll pump out 20 or 30 patients per hour, which I'm sure is great for their bank account. But for that individual who's struggling to maintain employment, that anywhere from $100 to $300 bill for that prescription is a very significant emotional event for them as well, and a barrier for them to be able to receive this treatment. So, huge fan of Amendment 3.
Ms. Robinson, given that marijuana remains illegal at the federal level, how do you anticipate Florida navigating potential conflicts between state and federal law if Amendment 3 passes?
Okay, well, first of all, I'm born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland. And if you know anything about Maryland, marijuana is legal there now. And what our governor did was he pardoned 175,000 people who had these misdemeanor marijuana sentences. So that's 175,000 people who can get parts of their lives back. And so this speaks to voting, because federally he can only do what on the state level. And so when we're looking at this as in our state and thinking about the number of people who are incarcerated for these misdemeanor marijuana charges and those who are awaiting sentences, passing this bill gives them a new lease on life for the most part. And so I think in that regard, that's something that we really should take a look at as far as the legality, the legal system of it all.
Thank you.
You're
Justin, what are the key challenges and strategies you've encountered in educating voters about Amendment 3 in Seminole County, and how do you address misconceptions?
Yeah, so a lot of the misconceptions of marijuana usage comes from a long history of propaganda that stigmatized the uses of marijuana. Back in the 70s, when the war of drugs took effect, severely impacting Black and brown communities predominantly, and poor communities. There were many people who were, chastised for, their uses of marijuana. Meanwhile, you could drink, right? There's so many other drugs with so many different side effects that are illegal. Even today, there's more people dying of opioid usage, prescription opioid usage, which is very highly addictive, that is being sold to the masses. It's a public emergency at this very moment. Alcohol, right? How many people die in alcohol-related deaths every year? So combating those misconceptions, you have to meet them with education, and also be understanding that they are people are subject to years of programming by police, media, television, things that they were just told, and was just ingrained in their psychology. So you have to give them the education about the usage of marijuana, how it could be beneficial to people medically, and why we should um, fight for the smart and safe usage of marijuana. Marijuana is one of those drugs that can be laced with other harder drugs, such as heroin or any other type of substance that could increase the potency of feeling that high sensation. And that's what some people get subjected to when they buy from sources that are not vetted. If you buy marijuana on the streets, you're just hoping that the person that you brought it from didn't do anything to it or tamper with it. So having recreational uses in the state of Florida will eliminate that. It will allow people to go to a source, at least that has been, vetted through the state. We went through all the legal paperwork and documents to be filed to be able to sell that marijuana to a consumer safely, and comes from a reputable grower that's also been vetted. So yes.
Thank you, Justin. This question is open for all panelists to answer, but Wayne, if you can answer first, what do you see as the key public health implications of legalizing marijuana? How can we balance the potential medical benefits with concerns about recreational use and public safety?
Ooh, okay, it's a multi-part question there. Uh, so I think number one, the benefit of legalizing this is it removes a stigma that's out there. Number one, that's the first step in doing this, enabling people to seek that care without having to go through multiple steps of either finding an illicit way to procure it or going through the what can be economically detrimental method of procuring it through a physician. Um, so number one, it helps alleviate that stigma. Legalizing it also, tends toward the, releasing of that stigma of the years worth of propaganda that go behind marijuana, because it is non-habit forming. It is helpful. It is beneficial. You can wake up the next day and not have a hangover if you're using this for recreational use. And it helps get a good information campaign out there. Again, much like any other use of a drug like alcohol, you don't want someone smoking a lot of marijuana and driving their vehicle, much like you don't want someone having multiple drinks and driving their vehicle. You want to keep the road safe. So I think the number one thing is just helping educate and alleviate that stigma, if that helps answer the question.
Yeah.
I would say that education is is definitely key. And some of the things that I've found when I was actually just at a town hall about an Amendment 3 town hall this week. And one of the things that I found was that people were looking at it from a specifically recreational um, view. And what I said was we have to look at it at a broader, in a broader sense than just recreational. First of all, I talked about, I just recently talked about how people's sentences could be pardoned, but that'll depend on who the governor is. But it's also, and that's a criminal justice issue. Then we have a farming issue because someone has to grow it. And as a black person, or, I'm looking at black farmers, I'm looking at, you know, uh, many different farmers that this opens this up to. In the state of Florida right now, in just the medical marijuana, they make over $1.6 billion a year. There are more people working in the marijuana industry in Florida than we have hairstylists, firefighters, or plumbers. Okay. And that they're not all growing. That, you're thinking about, there's accounts payable, accounts receivable. It's a job. You get what I'm saying? So it's something that could stimulate the economy as well. In addition, I look at it from an entrepreneurial uh, sense, in that right now, once, if it passes, the only people who will be able to sell it right now are people who already have medical marijuana dispensaries right now. But once that opens up, then there's education that's needed for people. If you're a street pharmacist, y'all know what I'm talking about. You're already a business person. You're already in business. You get what I'm saying? You already have that mentality. So take it from the street into your own brick and mortar, or into your, so there's a lot more from an education perspective that can happen. And that's how we need to look at it.
So Ms. Robertson, you spoke on this a little bit before. So many are arguing that the marijuana legalization should address past injustices such as expunging records for marijuana related offenses. Does Amendment 3, as we see it on the ballot now, go far enough in addressing these concerns, and what more could be done?
No, it doesn't, because again, these are things that come from the governor. And so if the governor isn't one, and right now the governor of Florida is not in favor of Amendment 3. So, if it passes, a lot of the things that I just said probably won't happen. But that again speaks to advocacy. It speaks to mobilizing people. It speaks to letting our voices be heard. My favorite saying is, the power of the people is more powerful than the people in power. And once we understand that politicians work for us, we don't work for them, then we can raise our voices and get things done that need to be done, that we want done.
Justin or Wayne want to answer?
Yeah. So no, Amendment 3 does not go far enough in correcting the past injustices that minority people specifically have encountered at the hands of the war on drugs, and the stigmatization that's been put forth upon them. Amendment 3, biggest contributor right now is True Leave, one of the biggest national marijuana dispensary owners in the country, possibly in the world. Their main thing is economic benefit, right? They see if they could be the first individuals in the market, get their hands on majority of the marketplace quickly, they have the most to gain from it. So I don't see, or I do not know, if they have a plan for racial equity in their long-term vision of their company. I'm not sure if they have marijuana dispensaries in minority communities, right? I'm not sure if they have a lot of marijuana minority staff. I'm not sure if they having some type of apprenticeship programs for people to get into to learn about how they could enter the industry. I'm not sure if they're doing that. But this can potentially, as seen in other states, lead to pardons, lead to expungement. But as my sister said, that will become us to advocate and put pressure on our state officials to pass legislation to pardon and to expunge records, but this can be the gateway to that.
Wayne, do you want to add anything?
Actually, if I could just circle back to the last question for a second, if that's okay. A few more things I wanted to key on with this, because I've spoken about the use of medical marijuana in treatment of PTSD and moral injury, but there are multiple other studies out there that show its effectiveness on things like epilepsy, ADD, ADHD, autism, and I've seen the effects firsthand of those struggling with those different diagnoses using medical marijuana as a treatment as opposed to traditional pharma. And the results have been absolutely phenomenal for them, game changers for them, enabling them to be pillars of the business world as a result of it. So I don't want to limit my responses to the medical aspects when it comes to just the veteran community. At large, it has a huge benefit across the board. Additionally, talking about economic impact, right here in Orange County, does everyone know what the number one driver of economic activity here in Orange County is? I mean, take a guess. What's that? No, it's tourism. Tourism is by far the number one. But what's number two for Orange County? Agriculture. Agriculture is the number two driver of economic activity here in Orange County. So legalizing this has a huge economic impact and enables us to build more inroads in that business world as well.
And I will say, speaking of when Justin was talking about, are there minority dispensaries or whatever? Of all the dispensaries in the country, only 500 are minority owned right now. Oh, in Florida, yeah, no. And I actually will be speaking to Black farmers sometime next week about, how we can, the Black farmers in this country just finally got their $2 billion, or maybe you didn't know, from the lawsuit. The farmers in the United States just finally got their $2 billion, from the United States for all of the racism and being locked out of so many different things. And so it's the same. I met someone who worked with Colorado when they were legalizing their marijuana, and the farmers there had to fight as well. And they're still fighting, but they're making inroads little by little. So again, here it'll be the same thing. It'll have to be a fight, unfortunately, but when we fight together, we win.
We want to open it up to questions from the audience. There's a microphone right there. If anyone has any questions.
Hi, I'd like to inquire about home grow. I understand that it's not supposed to be allowed under Amendment 3. It's going to be very difficult to pass if it ever passes. And are there any provisions made for it at this point?
Not that I'm aware of. You guys know?
No. There's talk about cancer patients, but I don't know.
Well, okay, provisions, okay.
So how hard is it going to be to overcome the way it's written? Have any of you read? Do you know the policy well enough?
I haven't read the provision piece about homegrown myself. So I'm not unable to speak on it.
I'm a little bit in the same boat. I've read the entire provision, but I'm not a lawyer, so I couldn't opine on that.
It says you can hold up to 85 grams of weed on your person.
Right.
So that's a lot of weed. Just in case y'all know, 85 grams, that's
3
a lot of
ounces.
weed. So I am interested to see how that is incorporated with homegrown.
Right.
How would they know you were growing it at home? I'm just curious.
I'm sorry?
How would they know you were growing it at home?
I really don't know, but it's a matter of if someone should get arrested, what's going to happen. And is there any way that we can overcome the way it's written now? I mean, as I've been told, there isn't going to be any home grow the way this has been. They've designed it so that there's no way.
Oh no, I'm gonna have
Obviously,
to
they're
study
protecting
that.
their interests.
There's always a way around everything.
Yeah, oh
That's
yeah.
my
Well, somebody's got to get
mentality.
arrested, and then they
So
have to
no,
challenge
no,
the law.
no. But I mean, a lot of people probably thought there was no way this was going to get on the ballot,
True.
but it's on there.
Yeah. Well.
So and it would take people speaking up. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Cancer patients, different people. That's what it's going to take
Hmm.
to get things to change.
Right.
And to that point, when this law, if it passes, there's going to be amendments to this law before it's enacted. The lawmakers going to grab hold of it, and they're going to pass some type of legislation, possibly next year during the legislative session in Tallahassee, which is I think in April or March of next year, when those lawmakers are looking to pass new laws in the state of Florida, they're going to potentially add something to this amendment. I'm pretty sure. So if we want to make sure that homegrown is included in this amendment, we should contact our state legislators and let them know to support homegrown weed or have some type of provision added to Amendment 3 if it passes.
Amendments. Now you're talking. Thank you very much.
And also to your point about cancer patients' usage of medical marijuana, nothing was addressed when the medical marijuana was adopted in Florida in 2016. But now, since the recreational use is coming into effect, there will be more provisions and things thought through during this next legislative session, as Justin pointed out. So this is our time now to contact our lawmakers within our respective communities to make sure that these different issues are addressed once we find out if it does become law in November.
One woman who was on the Amendment 3 panel last week, she works with people in hospice, and she talked about how marijuana was used as people were transitioning. And that's another thing that people hadn't really thought about, because quite frankly, I wasn't even thinking about it until she brought it up. So, like everyone has been saying, now is the time for us to contact the powers that be.
Any other questions from the audience? I'll go ahead.
So, how do you think that this amendment and its presence on the ballot is going to affect young voter turnout to the election in November?
First, they have to know about it. And I've met so many people, period, who didn't even know it was on the ballot. And so again, it goes back to, I was a professor for like 20 years. So even though I'm not in that profession anymore, once an educator, always an educator. So education is key, getting out, coming to these types of forums, letting people know, because everybody in this room is going to go back and say something to somebody. And then we have to keep having these town halls, keep having, go out and look, research it for yourself, read it. The foremost author on marijuana is a magazine, online magazine called Leafly, Leafly. Like I said, I don't smoke weed, but I read Leafly religiously, and it gives you like so much more information than even I could give you. So go online, research the amendment, look at other states who have already legalized it and the effect that it's having on the state, the economy, the jobs, everything like that. And I would say that that's what will help.
So I'd like to weigh in a little bit on this one too. I would like to hope that that would help create more of a turnout. Who in this room is between the ages of 18 and 25? Okay. You are the most unactive group when it comes to voting. And it's not just you. When I was your age, we were the most inactive group when it came to voting as well. You are unrepresented in the polls. You are not targeted by any political demographic because you don't show up. We didn't show up when I was your age. 18 to 25-year-olds don't show up. If you think it matters, and you should think it matters, what you should do is talk to your friends, get them to turn out. It would be fantastic if 2024 was the year that politicians actually had to start paying attention to that 18 to 25-year-old demographic. You know,
To your point, Campus Vote Project, our organization works with youth your age. And we have done a lot of research on that notion of 18 to 25-year-olds don't vote. It's not you sitting here, it's our family and friends that may not be in college settings that don't have the access to the resources we all have, being college educated people that don't necessarily show up. So I know you may hear that all the time. Your age group doesn't vote, and you're like, but everybody I know votes. So who's not voting? It's more, it's the demographic of 18 to 25-year-olds that aren't in college settings that don't necessarily show up. So if we can encourage that demographic, then you all can definitely come together and have like Wayne stated, politicians would definitely take heed to what you all want.
And I think it's important for 18 to 25-year-olds, especially 18 to 21 college age, to really understand how important young people's voices have always been regarding any change that has happened in this country. The civil rights movement, the Greensboro Four, they were 18-year-old college freshmen who sat in that Woolworth store and refused to leave. That sparked a change in this entire nation. If you look at Vietnam, young people's voices, like all of these different things, young people have started, and we have had to listen when you come together. So again, it speaks to you going out and talking to your friend, and their friend talking to their friend, and your family, and everything like that.
I do have a follow-up question to what you said. There's about 15,000 students who are residents of Orange County that go to UCF, and only 18 voted in the primary election on campus. How do you increase that voter turnout if this
18 voted in person on campus?
In person on campus.
Okay, so
And that's 0.001%.
18, look, I'm a lawyer, so I'm gonna ask you a bunch of follow-up questions.
Go ahead.
18 voted early in person on
Nope,
campus
that was
on election day.
It was on election day, but that included faculty and staff. So you don't even know the demographic of how many were students. And if you live in Orange County, this is one of the places that you can come in person and vote. And out of those that voted early, I think that might have been the number. No, that was the number that was included because there was 9 on election day.
So 9 people in all voted on election day at the UCF
Yeah, and the
precinct.
other 9 voted early.
Ooh,
At the UCF precinct.
I'm interested to hear from the audience on this, since these are your peers. Why do you think only 18 people showed up to vote out of 15,000 of the
And that includes faculty and staff. It could have been a professor or someone who lived in Orange County.
Okay.
I got y'all back. I'm saying y'all did vote by mail. So
didn't show up during the primaries.
How many of you guys voted during the primaries?
probably the 18 that showed up.
Students that vote.
Okay.
Did you vote here on campus?
Yeah.
Okay, but you did vote.
If you didn't vote, do anyone feel comfortable sharing the reason why? No judgment, just interested in the reason. Yeah.
Go ahead.
There you go. Mm-hmm.
Again, I just felt really uninformed, and I can't make a good decision if I don't know what's going on. And I have to worry about classes, and it's up for a bunch of people. It's their first time living on their own. And then if you get placed in some cultures, those cultures don't put an emphasis on voting. They put an emphasis on non-political things, and they're just never going to research it themselves. They can barely get to class by themselves.
So you would have been a first-time voter for the primaries. That would have been your first time voting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm registered for it.
No.
Yeah.
Not to diverge too much from Amendment 3, but the overall voting process, like at least my personal opinion, and I'm not trying to get political on one side or the other, but if you're not happy with a candidate or both candidates that you're looking at coming up in November, then and you didn't show up to primaries, then shame on you. Because the numbers who show up to primaries are traditionally significantly older population and even a very significant small number of that older population. So if you look at the total number of vote counts in November compared to the primary vote counts, it is worlds bigger number. It's not like most of the same people are turning out. It is a very small fraction of the people that are turning up for primaries. And my opinion, that's why you end up getting choices like we get.
What I would like to say too is there's an expression, all politics is local. And I
Yeah.
think a lot across the state, the turnout for the primary was abysmal
Yeah.
in Florida.
It was.
And I think
Very bad.
maybe it's because a lot of people don't understand how local elections affect them far more honestly than the president.
Mhm.
Who's on your school board, who's on your city council, your mayor, all of these different people are affecting your day to day. But as the young man said, and I appreciate it, he didn't feel informed enough. And that, quite frankly, I can appreciate that
Yeah.
because it's better if you're like, you know what, I don't know enough about this to cast a ballot, than it is to just go in blind and say, I'm voting, you know. But the key to then is to educate yourself. We have the last day to register for the general election is October 7th. I think you said you're already registered in
He's
Orange County.
registered.
Okay, good.
Mhm.
All right. So between now and then, whatever issues, there are 6 main amendments on the ballot. Look at all 6. We hear a lot about Amendment 4, which is reproductive rights. Everybody's hearing about that. But there's one which is basically Amendment 1 is making school board elections partisan. You know, think about that. You may not have children, but you will, you know, think about the ramifications of that. So look at all the amendments that are on the ballot. Check out the people who are running, and um, you know, decide for yourself what you want to do. But again, it goes to educating yourself and feeling comfortable enough when you walk into the booth to vote.
And my last piece on this part is that as a young black man, when I was growing up, it wasn't emphasized in my household that when I turned 18, I should go vote. And that's the reality for a lot of people. Amongst my peers, when you turn 18, finally turn 18, you hitting the club, right? That's the main thing that you're propagated towards, right? That's the programming that's put upon us as young people. And then, of course, you guys are trying to find yourselves. You also are just really entering the workforce. So, you know, pockets may not be on swole at the moment, and you just trying to get by. So your attention and energy is directed at so many different places as a young person. So it's not your fault. This country has done a great job at making sure that young people are steered away from elections. You have so many distractions more than ever before, so many different perspectives and opinions, and it could be very confusing at times and create voter apathy in which people just don't want to participate. But the people in this room who have now come to this discussion, hopefully you learned something. And I'm pretty sure the people in this room know about or will walk away knowing that they should vote in this year's elections. But it's up to you to use your social media platforms and spread this knowledge and promote going out to vote and talking to your friends about voting, right? No matter who they're supporting, whether they're supporting the right or left, talk to your friends about voting, share your perspectives, have healthy debates amongst each other about your views, but don't walk away hateful of someone else's views or opinions if they feel like they're making an educated decision based on factual information. So that's all from me.
Just out of curiosity, how many people in here watched the debate the other night? Okay, quite a few. Did that help you? Like if you were on the fence or if you weren't really sure, did that help you one way or the other? No, I'm seeing head shaking no. I'm
Some say
seeing some
yeah,
yes,
some
some
say
no,
yes, some say no.
kind of, sort of. Okay. But again, that's another way of getting education. The debates. Unfortunately, that looks like it's going to be the only one between these two candidates. But each one has their platform, and actually, they're more than just a Democrat and a Republican that are going to be on the ballot. Research who else is on there. Again, if you're not happy with either one, look at whoever else may be on there. But all of them have their platforms on their websites, and then just see what's best for you.
All right, so we are coming to the end of this amazing discussion that we've had this afternoon. So can we give a round of applause to our amazing panelists? Thank you all so much for your insight and perspective. Now I'm going a little off script, Haley. Bear with me. So, as I stated before, I'm the Florida State Coordinator for Campus Vote Project, and we have an amazing partnership with UCF and other institutions throughout the state and the other states that we work in as well. Everybody in here needs to tell at least two other people this weekend, November 5th is the last day to vote. That is election day. So we are going to encourage our families, our friends, our communities to vote before November 5th. November 5th is the last day to vote. Advocate for vote by mail, advocate for early voting, because anything can come up on election day. You might go to the wrong precinct, and maybe something wrong with your driver's license. You know, it's different identifications that we can use to vote in person. Something may be wrong with all of them that day. Don't wait until November 5th to vote. So make that promise to yourselves and to me, please, that we tell at least two other people this weekend. November 5th is the last day to have our voices heard in this very important election. So as
Can
we
you give them? Can I give them the date? The dates for early voting for Orange County: October 21st through November 3rd. Okay, October 21st through November 3rd.
All right, and that's homecoming. That's during homecoming. So take some time outside of Pegasus, I mean, all of that stuff that we do as Knights, and go vote. All right. So as we conclude today's forum, I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude again to our panelists for their time, expertise, and the valuable perspectives they brought to this important discussion on Florida Amendment 3 and the constitutional amendment process. This has been a powerful reminder of the significance of these issues and the impact they have on our state. I'd also like to express my appreciation to the University of Central Florida for hosting and sponsoring this event. UCF continues to be a leader in fostering civic engagement and public policy discourse, providing spaces like this where students, faculty, and the broader community can come together to explore critical issues. We are fortunate to have such a forward-thinking institution that informs dialogue and active participation in the democratic process. At the at Campus Vote Project, we believe that forums like this are essential to ensuring that all voters, particularly students, have the information they need to make educated decisions. As you leave this afternoon, I hope you feel empowered to not only think critically about Amendment 3, but also to remain engaged in the political process that shapes our lives. Thank you all again for being here and for contributing to this meaningful conversation. Let's continue to carry forward the spirit of civic engagement here at UCF and throughout our communities. Remember, your voice is your vote, and it holds the power to shape the future of Florida. Thank you again, and go Knights. Thank you.
What's that?
No, I was gonna give you.
Thank you.
Can you see it?
Yeah, yeah. Let me scan it.
Oh,
I'm gonna take one of them bowls to go.
thank you very much. I sure will.
You gonna do it? You gonna do something else before November?
We got our summit
Thank
tomorrow.
Oh yeah, you
So they're about to flip this room right now. Get us ready for tomorrow. Yeah. Yeah, last time it was just Central Florida. This time it's throughout the state. So, yeah, we got that tomorrow. But I'll let you know if we plan on anything.
I'm sorry. Oh, okay.
Sure.